Thank you all for joining us for this important discussion, training the next generation of libertarians. Today we have with us Dr. Mark Skousen. He is an economist, investment expert, and author of over 25 books. He is a presidential fellow at Chapman University and founded Freedom Fest. And he edits a lot of investment newsletters, and his work has inspired the US in adoption of gross output as an economic measure. Welcome, sir. And we also have Glenn Cripe. He is a co-founder and executive director of Language of Liberty Institute. And since 2005, Glenn has brought LLI Liberty Camps and seminars to over 3,000 students in 27 countries. Glad to have you, sir. Yeah, and today we would be discussing on like 4 major subtopics. That would be like sparking interest in freedom and liberty. And the second one would be, what are the major misconceptions that we would be addressing in the coming up generations? And also, how are we equipping our young libertarians, and how are we going to build a sustainable movement going forward? So, yeah. So we are opening up for the discussion, and here is your question. So as we see, like the younger generation is often exposed to a lot of misinformation online. Like many young people today lack critical thinking skills. So how are we going to address it? So, Mark Skousen?
This word misinformation is being abused itself, right? Every time I really bristle whenever I see the news media say, instead of so-and-so claims, they always put the word false in front of it, the false claim. And the media needs to go back to standard journalism where they just use the word claim. They claimed that the election was stolen or whatever it might be. Just leave it at that, claim. We've had a real problem with journalism, what we traditionally called yellow journalism. So this is a major issue of the problem with the media participating. On social media, you should be able to say anything. And if the social media outlet wants to censor you because for whatever reasons, that's their privilege too. It's a private company. And if you have robust competition, you will get Elon Musk coming in and buying out Twitter and changing it to a stupid name called X. I mean, you know, it's just, he's obsessed with the word X, and it's really unfortunate because Twitter is really a pretty cool name. It was, you know, it's actually a verb and so on. He blundered there, but I do like the fact that he has a much more open view regarding social media to say misinformation and that sort of thing. But in terms of social media itself, this is the great opportunity for libertarians. There's no question about it. And we're all recognizing that. And I was talking to my daughter Valerie, who runs Freedom Fest, and we've hired Ken Lee, Ken and Lee's daughter, to develop our social media for Freedom Fest. And she's done a fantastic job. She has, what she does is she puts these 30-second clips from Freedom Fest and puts it on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all this sort of thing. And just recently, we did one on the deep state. It was a panel we had at Freedom Fest on the deep state. And we had 400,000 views. And then they could go to the website and see on YouTube and see the entire 25-minute deep state panel that was put together at Freedom Fest, and thousands of people are seeing that. The number of people that have signed up to receive information on Freedom Fest has gone from 10,000 people to now 25,000 people. So, I mean, these are small numbers compared to Reason. Reason, by the way, online just hit 1 million regular people that are on the website and receive Reason magazine material for libertarianism. So this is a tremendous breakthrough for us. I was talking to Robert Chatfield about Free to Choose and what they're doing there. I mean, with these short videos, as you know, the Generation Z, the Gen Zs and so forth, they don't read anymore, but they do look. They do look. And I tell my students this at Chapman. I said, you don't read anymore, but you look, and they all nod in agreement. They don't argue with me on that. So we need to recognize that we need to do that.
Yeah. Glenn, how about your views?
Okay, how's this? So my programs are called Liberty Camps, and sometimes we have shorter versions called Liberty Seminars. And a Liberty Camp is 4 or 5 days and nights with 30 to 35 young people. These are normally in developing countries. We don't do them in the US or Canada. We go to third world, second world countries. We've done this since 2007. So far, we've been to 35 countries. We've had more than 85 programs. We have 30 to 35 young people, university age. And I refer to, these are not average people. They're not the, so my experience.
Below average?
Below average. My experience with Gen Z and my comments are based on these young people that I meet, it's over 3,000 now, through the Liberty Camps. And what I mean is, Hayek referred to intellectuals. These are the people who influence society. And he said, these are not the majority, these are maybe 15%. So I used the term opinion leaders because intellectual may be a little bit intimidating, and 20-year-olds aren't ready for that word, but they are opinion leaders. They're like many or all of you or most of you here, you are more active, you're more educated, you read more, you're more interested in ideas, you're interested in serious debate, you're interested in trying to find better explanations and better ways of living and thinking and communicating that to other people. So the students we look for our Liberty Camps are potential opinion leaders, and generally they already are. They're already recognized by the other 20-year-olds as being not quite like them. We aim to encourage that. Another way to think of the program is a libertarian boot camp. We assume they don't have any knowledge of our liberal ideas, although that's not really true. They know what they're coming for. They've read something, and they're coming for more. Our programs are all in English. Often what they've read is not in English. We've had students that have read Human Action in Polish. Can you imagine? And some of them may be in this room.
So are these Liberty Camps the same that Lee and Ken Skousen get involved with? Or is
Yes.
That, yeah.
Yes, in fact, and I did not invent this idea. It was some of us, our colleagues like Ken and Lobo and Lee, more than 20 years ago. They organized, they called them English camps. They organized them in Lithuania. They had 40 young people, 20 from Lithuania and 20 from Belarus. So they would do this every summer, the end of June, and they called it English Camp. And I finally joined them in 2004. I said, this is the greatest thing I've ever done. This is very exciting. I want to do this. So what my contribution or my innovation was to figure out how to do it in other countries. They're still doing this. Lobo is still involved with similar camps in Lithuania. But I figured out, think of like, it's sort of like franchising, how to do something similar in other countries. And that's led to 35 other countries. In fact, in the next year, we're planning 3 or 4 new countries, and our organizers are, I hope, are sitting in this room. Some of the young people you've met from Argentina and Bolivia, and yeah. Okay, guys, raise your hands. Yeah. We've been to Nepal 6 times. We'll go to Nepal the 7th time next year. Iksha, where are you? Are you over there? She's helping us in Nepal. Pakistan, we have an invitation for Pakistan. Where's Hasbu? There's Hasbu. So in each country, I work with a local partner, usually a young person like these, our friends here. Their job is to find the students and find the venue and manage the money. They also find local speakers. My job is to find international speakers, and some of them are here in this room. Where I saw Ken. Where's Ken? Ken has been to many camps. You're all invited. I hope all of you will come to a Liberty camp somewhere at some time. John Chisholm is sitting here somewhere. Maybe David Hutzelman, Lee Skousen. Who else? Stefan is here. And I have to, anybody else who's, I can't see because of the lights, but please raise your hand if you've been to a Liberty camp. And I have to especially single out Jacek, because he came to the first one that we had in Slovakia in 2007. He came, he was 21 years old, he was a student, he brought 10 young Polish friends to our first Liberty camp. And at the end of the week, he said, Glenn, this is the greatest week of our lives. We've got to start doing these things in Poland. I said, okay. I always say okay, and then I figure out later how to pay for it. And then I forgot about it. But he was serious, and he was already an organizer at age 21, and he pursued me, and the next year we returned to Slovakia, and the week after we went to Poland for the first time. How many did we do in Poland? 10? 10 or 11 Liberty camps in Poland. So as you may know, it's hard for us to do this now in Poland, and the reason is really good, because there are so many liberty programs and liberty organizations and books translated in Poland. There's Students for Liberty. There are Jacek's organizations. It's hard for us to find a market and get them to pay for Liberty Boot Camp because they're surrounded by it. So this is really good news.
There's nothing better. It's really hard. I mean, we talk about social media and going online and doing videos and stuff like that, but the in-person that you do, one for one, it reminds me of a quote from Benjamin Franklin who says, it's incredible the quantity of good that a single man or a single person can do if he makes a business out of it. And that's what you've done. You've made a business out of it. Even if it's nonprofit, it's a business, and you can make such a big difference. It reminds me, I know that we have the free market trade road show, for example, where it's run by Barbara Combe, and Barbara Combe does this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but she only they go to one city all-day conference, and then they go to another city and they do this free market roadshow in Europe, and they've done it in the United States as well, and they do it every year. And you wonder how influential it can be, how much leverage can you make. But it is interesting how word spreads around, and people read books and they pass along these ideas and so forth. I do think that it would be remiss if we left out some of the most powerful influences right now online that are going on. I'm thinking of Jordan Peterson's new Peterson Academy. They're getting started now doing all kinds of different teaching, like taking college courses. It's kind of an alternative to the Khan Academy, which is this free course of material that's, frankly, their economics is awful. It's standard Keynesian economics. So it's nice to see Jordan Peterson coming out and doing this. Or PragerU. PragerU is a great example of where free market ideas are often promoted. I don't like the left-right stuff that's constantly the demonizing of people and name-calling and stuff that PragerU does. But still, there's a lot of good ideas that come out of that. And Free to Choose Network, those Johann Norberg one, where they had the 3-minute videos on you're wrong, you're absolutely wrong on these various topics and stuff. The rap songs, the Mises, Marx, and Keynes versus Hayek. Have you seen those? The rap songs. 6 million people have seen these rap songs.
We have played those at our camps.
Those are really cool. They go into considerable detail about what's happening. So you do,
and they love it. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a great way to leverage our ideas. Who knows who the enemies of liberty, what they're doing? They're probably doing the same thing. But I also like on YouTube the streaming, where you see little clips of Charlie Kirk debating people and stuff, and Elon Musk coming on and saying, do you watch those where you have like a minute and you see this little streaming thing, and then you click down and you look again, and you can go on forever, by the way. You can and spend hours on YouTube going through these little clips that they have, and then you scroll down and you see the next clip. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Those are really cool. So there's so much stuff that we could do there in social media to make a big difference, as well as these individual programs that Young America's Foundation does and Fund for American Studies. There's just so many of these out there. I think it made a difference in this election, to be honest with you, all of this material.
Yeah, you both have shared a lot about like your teaching experiences and what are the opportunities that are available out in social media. But coming to a critical question, what are the most common misconceptions that young people hold about libertarianism, and how can we bridge the gap between the reality, showcasing the practical benefits that they can obtain from libertarian principles?
So, one of the, I don't know if it's a misconception, but I actually think, and this is going to be controversial because I know a lot of you are Ayn Rand fans, but I'm telling you, when I teach a class called Libertarian CEOs, so we look at John Mackey of Whole Foods Markets in his book Conscious Capitalism and how he runs his business. Then we look at Charles Koch, Koch Industries, and how they run their business. Then we look at John Allison of BB&T Bank, which is now Truist Bank, one of the most successful bank stores. And then there's Bill Bonner of Agora. So those are kind of the case studies we do in the Libertarian CEO. Bill Bonner does Agora financial newsletters and trading services. So John Allison has his executives all read Atlas Shrugged. And he has one of the most successful business models out there based on Ayn Rand principles. But then when the students pick up a copy of The Virtue of Selfishness, they reject this completely. They don't like Ayn Rand. They're very social, and they think selfishness is an evil in the world. This is very common among. Ayn Rand is down at the bottom. Nobody wants to work for John Allison's organization because of his defense of what he calls selfishness. Now you can say, well, that's a misconception about it and so forth, but Ayn Rand deliberately chose that title to be provocative and to argue what really matters is self-interest, yourself, and almost an attack on the Christian principles of love your neighbor as yourself. So the neighbor connection is really important in Christian thought. And I once had a debate with, I'm trying to think, Jorn Brook at Freedom Fest. And at one point I said, I think Ayn Rand viewed herself as the Antichrist. And Jorn Brook nodded in great agreement, yes. but it just didn't go over well with my students, and I have found this no matter where I talk and so forth, they reject this concept. So that's just one example of a misconception that a lot of people have, or maybe it's an accurate description, I don't know, but somewhat controversial, right?
Yeah, I agree. And the people I work with, again, are in other countries, meaning that in most cases English is not their first language. And I have learned to be very, very careful about how I use words like that. And that's the first example I have. Other examples are about individuality, individualism, altruism. We, among ourselves, are very careless about how we use these words because we assume that we've read the same books, and we assume we understand the arguments, and we understand the nuances of English. But 20-year-olds in other countries, that's not true. And often our ideas come across, as Mark said, with his American students, that they perceive it as being anti-family or anti-community. And if we really think about it, that's not really what we meant, and that's not really what Ayn Rand meant. It's just that, but we have to watch our words very carefully. We create misconceptions, and we turn them off often. That's a danger that I have with my groups.
Thank you for this. And what are the things like going forward? Like we have actually covered like enlightening them, then like we have covered about the major misconceptions from your experience. Then right now I would like to know, how are we going to equip these young libertarians? How do you think, like what are the skills that young people need to become effective champions? Like it may include like communication, strategies, public policy knowledge, or political engagement tactics. Like what has your experience been?
So I've thought about this a lot, and I actually think that a lot of libertarians sell themselves short in their ability to influence the world. And by that I mean, what occupations do you choose, okay? So look who the most influential people are in this group. They're successful businessmen. They're the ones who are putting up the money to do a lot of these programs, okay? So you have Chris Roofer, you have John Chisholm, Ron Manners. There are others who are wealthy business people that have made their money in technology and mining and tomatoes in California, right? They have a lot of influence because they're willing, and they're not only willing to speak, but they put up money to push these things along. So we need to get beyond the poverty-stricken libertarian who is focusing on who knows what self-interest and become more successful businessmen. So that's number one. That would be great. Be a successful business person. And number two is go into journalism. You know, there's several courses that are taught on, for the Fund for American Studies, for example, has a journalism program. Going into journalism is a tremendous opportunity to have some influence in the world. I imagine if you become one of the editors of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the LA Times, or Epic Times, the Washington Times. There's all kinds of these publications that are out there that are having a tremendous influence. Or Forbes magazine. I mean, it's unfortunate that some of these places have been replaced. I mean, you know, Time magazine used to be run by Republican, conservative, free market type libertarians, and that's not the case anymore, or Newsweek, or what have you. So I think journalism is another area that can be done. The other one is anathema to many libertarians is entering the political arena. I remember well Carl Hess writing the book The Death of Politics, and I grew up in the 1970s where you felt that politics was a dead-end road, so you didn't get involved in politics. So I admire those who are part of the Libertarian Party and getting involved in stuff like that. There's the Leadership Institute that Morton Blackwell puts on, where you can learn to be an effective politician. He has week-long courses where you can take that to develop it. So there's lots of these areas where young libertarians can move into organizations that can leverage their influence.
Yeah, Glenn.
Yes, I encourage our young people to maybe slow down and take a step back and be patient, because they come, again, 20 to 25-year-olds, they're and above average ability and intelligence, and they're ready to change the world. They're ready to reform in whatever way, in business or in politics or in journalism. So I encourage them. That's wonderful. I suggest you concentrate first on improving yourself. Understand, you can't control the world. What you can control is yourself. You can control your ideas. I get this from Harry Brown as well as Ayn Rand. What you do have control over is yourself and your life. Work on your life. Work on your beliefs, your values, your goals, your self-analysis. When John comes to camp and does his workshops about your inner company, he gives them STARS chart to help them, and a methodology for analyzing business ideas as well as personality skills, like attitude toward risk. If you're ambitious, you're going to try things and you're going to fail. What does that do? Can you handle failure? Americans are trained to handle failure. If you fail at your business or you drop out of school, your family and friends say, well, what did you learn? Or what will you do next? But in most countries, that's not the reaction. The cost of failure is too great. On the other hand, what happens if you succeed? Can you handle success? What if you make $1 million? Is that good? I ask students, would you like to have $1 million? Would you like to be a millionaire? And they don't know what to say, because in their culture, they're trained that that's bad. And it's bad because usually you got it in dishonest ways. So I encourage our students to do this kind of self-evaluation and self-development. If that's all you do and you stop there, you've already accomplished a lot. If every person in the world does that, we have a better world. Some people will go farther. Some people will become teachers and mentors and role models and entrepreneurs and business leaders, and they want to reach out and communicate with others. So I make another suggestion to them. I say, you set a realistic goal, and maybe you don't need to be a doctor of economics or physics or philosophy or something. Most of us will never do that. If you can do that, that's wonderful. But you can accomplish other things. Learn to tell stories. Learn to tell good, important stories. For example, tell the story of iPencil. For example, tell the story of the broken window. For example, tell the story of the meaning of money, Rand's story of the meaning of money. If that's all you do, if you tell other people, the people around you, your family and friends, those stories and the meaning of them, we change the world. And, by the way, don't forget to give them the link to the Jonathan Gullible animation.
I was just going to bring that up. Ken Skousen is a great example of a person who's running around the world. 55 editions, you're up to 55 translations of Jonathan Gullible, and I tell people about this all the time to get that in the bookstores and stuff like that. I've done some of the work myself. From my own perspective, there's a couple of things that I'm trying to do to make a difference in the world. One is I've lectured now in over 110 colleges and universities. And I remember Ludwig von Mises once saying he was invited to a major university to give a 1-hour lecture, and he turned it down because he said, what can I do in 1 hour to make any difference considering the hundreds of hours they get with the Keynesian and Marxist propaganda? So he turned them down. And I think it was Harvard University. And I think that was a big mistake. You never know who's in the audience, 1 or 2 people in the audience. When you give a talk, you can change their lives. So we want to make sure that you don't turn down those obligations. So I've spoken to 110 universities, and I actually had a goal when I was younger to give lectures at every major college and university in the country. I'm getting a little too old to reach the 3,000 universities and colleges around the world. But also leverages in books, like the book on Jonathan Gullible, and many of you have written books as well, and you try to get them out. It's never been easier to get published, even self-published, and you go out and promote it. So I've written 2 textbooks called, one is Economic Logic. It's in its 6th edition. It's the only real free market textbook out there, in my opinion. And it's based on my business experience. So students really love my textbook, Economic Logic, because instead of starting with supply and demand curves, which don't exist in real life, it's hard to actually measure supply and demand curves. So I start with the P&L statement. Everybody know what the P&L statement is? Profit and loss income statement. And what's interesting about that is there's no equilibrium. What's the equilibrium profit margin? Well, you want to maximize your profits. That's what it is. And it's a wonderful tool that students really understand and explain. The other one is The Making of Modern Economics, which is a history of the great economic thinkers. I made Adam Smith the hero, and it's the first time anyone has created a history which is told like a story, where you have a hero, Adam Smith, you have a plot where his system of natural liberty comes under attack by the Marxists and Keynesians and is often left for dead. And then he's resuscitated by the Austrians and the Chicago School and the supply-siders. And in the end, he has a good ending with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet central planning model. So that book is published by Routledge, a major publisher, and it's in its 4th edition. It's one of the more popular textbooks out there. So you can teach. I've taught at Columbia Business School and now at Chapman University, and that's like your Liberty camps. You have your students for a period of time and you influence them, but again, those students 30 years from now may be billionaires who are giving back and so forth to a good cause. And let me just say one other thing that's really important, and that is the libertarians who say, and there's a lot of them, who have become extremely wealthy, and they don't give anything to any charities. They are opposed to charities, and they're wealthy people, and they don't give at all. And I don't want to name any names, but I know a lot of them. And I'll say, hey, why don't you give to this cause or that cause? No, I'm not giving any money. Well, where's your money going to go? You don't have any kids. I don't know. It's baffling, but it came out of the 70s, part of the hard money movement, the hatred of politics. You can't do anything in politics, so why give money to any of them or any nonprofit organizations? But I admire the people in this room and elsewhere who are very much involved in trying to make a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So right now, going ahead, like how do we build a sustainable movement? So here in this room, you find a lot of international people like me. So there has been an increase in populist and authoritarian movements all across the globe. So how do you promote this kind of a libertarian values to educate this young generation of Gen Zs, and not only like equipping and empowering them, and also training them to mentor other people going forward? So how do you see that, like empowering the next generation? Glenn?
I think a very important way to do it, and you mentioned unfavorable or hostile, what did you say? In a bad environment.
Yeah,
authoritarian environment. I think there are many possibilities, but one that seems especially productive and less risky to me is through entrepreneurship. And other speakers have advocated this in other ways, so I'll advocate it in the context of my program. if often when we think of entrepreneurship, we think specifically of starting a business, maybe not starting a nonprofit, but they require similar skills. Maybe we think of writing a business plan and raising money, but there's a lot more involved than just that. I already mentioned attitude about risk and failure, how you can handle that. But there's another dimension that we can provide. People can learn to write business plans and proposals in many places. But what we can provide in our program is the extra dimension, the morality. Why it's good and right to develop yourself and pursue your dreams and be successful, and the better you are, the more money you'll make, and why this is morally right, why this is good, why this is important. So that's my answer. And there are a couple of places we've been where you can't really speak freely. The first one that comes to mind is Ethiopia. We had people from the government watching us. We knew that. The police arrested some of our students after the event. The students did not feel free to speak their minds. It's a free country, but there was an election coming, et cetera, et cetera. But if we talk about entrepreneurship, that's not controversial because everybody everywhere loves entrepreneurs. And we can work in. We're teaching libertarian values without using the labels.
Well, I think Jimmy Lai would be a good example where he was censored and is in prison today and probably in prison for the rest of his life, the way the Chinese, if it's up to the Chinese government, and maybe President Trump can put some pressure on there. You know, there's an old saying that you don't change the politicians until you change the people who elect them. And that's really an important statement, and that's what Libertarian is all about. You know, we're a more bottom-up type of approach, and spreading the word among friends. And one of the things I recommend is spending time with people you don't agree with. I read books that I don't agree with. I've become friends with Peter Coy, who's the economics editor of the New York Times. We went to the American Economic Association meetings last year together, and we had a lot of really important discussions. I mean, how often do we're meeting among friends and stuff like that, but we also need to meet among people that we don't agree with and have a civil discussion, hopefully, without it turning into a shouting match. It's really important. One of the things we try to do at Freedom Fest is we bring in people that don't agree with us, and we have lots of debates. That's so important. The other thing I wanted to mention was I had passed around this pamphlet, The Economics of Life Made Simple. So this is the cover story that I wrote for Skeptic Magazine. Skeptic Magazine is by Michael Shermer, who's a libertarian, but he also is a strong advocate of global warming and stuff like that. There's some areas that we don't agree with. But he reaches out to, you know, he's a former columnist to the Scientific American. He's reaching out to people that don't agree with him on all kinds of issues and interviews them and so forth. This is really healthy. So anyway, he asked me to do a summary of what economics is all about. So it's a 15-page report with lots of pictures because students don't read, they look. I had so many positive response for people who wanted copies of this that I printed up these copies and handing them out. So if you go to skousenbooks.com, you can get more of these if you want. I just got an order today for 18 copies. That's from a non-economist who said this was so good, I'm handing it out to my clients and my friends and stuff like that. I had an accountant come up to me and he says, Mark, you know, I've always tried to understand economics and never could, so I bought the book Economics for Dummies. And I still couldn't understand economics. I must be dumb. He said, until I read your pamphlet. And I had a lawyer say, this is the best brief in economics I've ever read. I've had housewives who say, I now understand economics. So take a look at this pamphlet. It's small for me to do this. I printed up 5,000 of these and making it available as much as I can. And I think that sort of thing is really important. The other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned how how Ken Lee is working on our Freedom Fest website and stuff like that. So how many are familiar with Civil? Okay, Civil. So Civil is putting themselves up as the Netflix of the libertarian movement. The Netflix of the libertarian movement. So it's civl.com. And we're part of that with Freedom Fest, and you can link to civil.com/Freedom Fest or /Free to Choose or /JG, and you can have little snippets of all of these things that are going out, and they are aggressively expanding. So I'd like to recommend that as something that we can all link up to and maybe have an influence. It's a fairly new organization, but they're doing a lot of good things.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Glenn. Now we open up for the questions.
I'm so pleased that you mentioned what the Liberty camps and things are going on around the world. I wanted to highlight what my wife has been doing with the free market caravan, because Barbara Combe didn't want her to use the free market roadshow. The free market caravan in China, for more than 11 years now, she's had an annual free market Austrian economics seminars at Northeastern University every year with 10 scholars of Austrian economics, Chris Lingle and Jeff Crawford, who else is Per Bielen, and others, for 12 years in China at Northeastern University, and the roadshow that goes to 9 other cities all around China. When all the other free market institutes are being closed down, she's been able to do it, and I have to say at great personal risk, keeping up an astounding free market exhibit right in China and getting lots of publications and translations of free market books all throughout China. So I think she really deserves recognition by that as well.
Lee is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the freedom movement. Do you know what I mean by that? If you use the Obi-Wan Kenobi method and you face a government official, you say, oh, let him pass, let her pass. She's not to be arrested or detained. Let her pass. That's you. You're the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the freedom movement.
I tell people I'm not afraid of them. They are afraid of me. Oh, I have 2 comments. When you talk about this rap, Mrs.
The rap songs?
Versus Marx. My friend put Chinese subtitle on it and posted. Within a week, we got 4 million views.
Wow.
And before the Chinese government, CCP, shut it down. But we got 4 million views within a week. And another comment was a friend of ours, Winston Lin, probably many of you knew. He is in the beauty pageant business. And he handed out Jonathan Gullible and Ayn Rand's book to all these beauty queens in China. When they take them, before they go on stage, okay, read this.
Wow.
Jens, thanks so much for this. I'd like to reinforce 2 things that each of you said. First of all, Mark, last week I was with our friend Pete Calcagno at the College of Charleston, talking to some young MBA and entrepreneurship students there. And the question came up, what's the most inspiring book you've ever read? And I said, well, it would have to be Atlas Shrugged. And I talked about the book, how it paints a heroic picture of entrepreneurs, the kind of person you would aspire to be like. Maybe it was a factor, it probably was a factor in my becoming an entrepreneur myself. But I didn't mention the author. And I was just afraid that some of these young people might have heard something negative about Ayn Rand and been turned off by that. So I just talked about the book and the title of the book, Atlas Shrugged, and left it at that. So very much along the same lines you were talking about. And Glenn made the point beautifully, but just to even further reinforce it, entrepreneurship can be used as a hook and a wedge to get young people interested in free market economics. Free market economics itself sounds kind of boring, but entrepreneurship and learning how to discover, launch, and scale the ideal business for you, starting with unsatisfied customer needs in areas that you're passionate about, is something that young people can really get interested in. And so it's a good way to market and position your programs, anyone's programs, to young people for Austrian economics.
Yeah, John, I know that I agree with you. Atlas Shrugged, I think, is a far superior work to introduce people. It's 1,000 pages long, so it's tough reading, but it's a great novel. I enjoyed reading it and so forth. I think if she had just not published the Virtue of Selfishness, which was her provocative title, that's just a turnoff for young people, and it was, I think, unnecessary. So Atlas Shrugged. The Fountainhead is also, I think the Fountainhead's even, in my opinion, actually a better put together novel than Atlas Shrugged. But both of them are really excellent introductions where entrepreneurs are heroes, capitalists are heroes in there, and that's the best way to introduce it. Unfortunately, the Virtue of Selfishness is this little booklet, and the title is a turnoff so that's the only unfortunate part about that, I think. By the way, on entrepreneurship, I don't know how many of you know about the teaching of entrepreneurship, which is done by a lot of high schools, and I was very much involved. I was a judge on all these very entrepreneurial projects, and that's just a great way to introduce people. And the people behind that are libertarians.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Glenn. We have come to the end of the discussion. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you.